So Andrew Denton, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you, Laura.
We've had almost 2 years of voluntary assisted dying in Victoria. What's happened there?
Well, what's happened is pretty much what people, other than those who oppose the law, thought would happen. The sky hasn't fallen in. A very small number of people, about half of 1% of all Victorians who die have used it. That's 228 people in a little over 18 months. The average age was 70, 50% men and women, just about. Most of them with cancer, others with neurological diseases, all seriously ill people at the end of their lives, and they and their families incredibly thankful for a law that offered them a merciful way to end their lives rather than have to suffer all the way through to a natural death.
Well, a lot of states are now looking at introducing regimes similar to Victoria's. What's a snapshot of where we're up to?
Well, Western Australia and Tasmania have since passed a law, and they've looked at what's happened in Victoria, and they've basically built on the Victorian law, but they've made a few small changes. So, for example, in both those states, unlike Victoria, a doctor can initiate the conversation about assisted dying because it's a legally available choice. In both those states, unlike Victoria, they can use telehealth as part of the consultation, and that has been a problem in Victoria. In both those states, unlike Victoria, not just a doctor but also a nurse practitioner can, under certain circumstances, administer the life-ending medication. But essentially they are the same laws. They are aimed at people who are terminally ill with 6 months or less to live, or in the case of neurodegenerative diseases like motor neuron disease, a year or less to live. They have to be examined by 2 doctors independent of each other. It's a very rigorous process. That's something that the Victorian experience has shown us. These are not easy laws to access.
So in this second series of podcasts, in some ways you've moved beyond that threshold decision that society takes about assisted dying, and you're talking to people who are sort of caught up in the process. Can you tell us a little bit about the sort of unexpected aspects that of people's lives and stories that have come out of those interviews?
Well, that assisted dying is humane and it's merciful and it's peaceful, but it's not a golden ticket because, to quote the poet Mary Oliver, you still have to say goodbye to your one wild and precious life. And so losing somebody, even in this humane situation, is always hard. So I've spoken to families for whom the farewell was one of the most beautiful things you can imagine. A woman who was 82, had a neurodegenerative disease. Her family took her out shortly before she died for an afternoon. The entire family was there, the grandchildren, everyone. They played home movies. It was essentially, this is your life for her. And her daughter put her arm around her shoulder and pointed to everyone and said, look what you have created. This is because of you. So that was very beautiful. But I've also spoken to families where, assisted dying doesn't magically change people's lives. It just changes how their deaths are going to be.
One of the most complicated areas must be cases of people with dementia. What should happen there? I mean, this has got to be a really difficult question given the growing numbers of people with dementia in old age.
The number one question I get whenever I talk about this publicly is about dementia. And I understand why, because it is such a huge issue for particularly Australians who are over 80. I've had experience of it in my extended family. Many people I know have. It is not available under any proposed VAD law in Australia, and I can understand why that is. I've spoken to so many politicians who have voted for and against this issue over the last few years, and they are struggling with the concept. They struggle with the concept of helping a terminally ill person to die. To take somebody who may not be able to speak for themselves, that's a whole other question again. And when I went to the Netherlands, they have the Netherlands has the longest running conversation about this in the world, and they have a particular place called the Life Ending Clinic, which deals with specialised cases such as dementia. And I spoke to the man that ran it, and he talked about a particular case. And again, if you have dementia, you still have to prove that it is your wish to have your life ended. You have to prove that you know what you're asking for. And he put it very well. He said, in the end, you have to decide whether or not to leave the ball before midnight. In other words, to end your life sooner than it would naturally happen, or to drift off into that grey zone that is dementia. I think it's a very difficult question, but I don't think it's one, and opponents would say, oh, this is the slippery slope. I don't think it's a case of advocates wanting to expand these laws. Our society is facing a very, very difficult and growing medical issue. And I think if not this generation, the next generation will still be wrestling with it, as they are in other countries. Should assisted dying be made available through advanced care directives? I think it's very difficult to ask a doctor to administer a lethal medication to someone who may not be able to speak for themselves. So I personally find it the hardest part of this question.
Thanks for talking to us tonight.
Thanks, Laura.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.